Hello, 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 friends, and welcome to another gay book review. This time we're touching on Dads with Benefits, a Fairview Singles Dads Book 1 by Jason Collins. This one is involving two single fathers who find love in an unexpected way. So as we go through the review, as we normally go through them in basically every one I've ever done, we're going to do things like touch on the spoilers, touch on the characters, the tropes, and stuff like that. So if it is something that you are wanting to read for yourself, just know that I will recommend this book. It's fairly cute, fairly short as well. I think it's just under 165, 170 pages or so. It's a simple read. It's not too complex in terms of any overarching plot, but I will be touching on kind of the overall gist of the romance as a whole. So starting off with, let's introduce our characters here. We have Ellis and James. Ellis is the single father of Sarah, who he had as a surrogate, just because he wanted a child. He is gay, and he works in a corporate job where the son of the CEO is basically sexual harassing him throughout the entire book, if you will. He's constantly flirting with him, as we'll see, and kind of just acting inappropriate. When confronted, he does say he has a boyfriend, when he actually doesn't, to get out of the dating the CEO's son, and that kind of sets the premise off for the entire book from there. And we meet James. James is a single divorced father of Brandon. He is straight. He is willing to be a fake boyfriend, but then, as you do in that kind of situation, he caught some feelings. He works as a manager of a sports goods store, so that does come into play in some of the dates that they have, or at least a couple of them specifically. And he is on good terms with his ex-wife, mother of Brandon, which we'll introduce in a second here. Some of the other cast you will see in this book include the CEO of Ellis's company, who is George Lamond. George's wife / the mother of Ian is Tanya Lamond, and then we have the CEO's son, Ian Lamond. We have Ellis's daughter, as we touched on, Sarah, James's son, Brandon, and then James's ex-wife, Cheryl. Those are the names you'll just kind of see throughout the book. I would say the most important characters in this are George, Ian, Sarah, and Brandon. Cheryl and Tanya come in briefly, but they don't overstay their welcome by any stretch of the imagination. So, all in all, probably a solid core group of cast, I would say, for a book like this. So the overview, Ellis is the second to arrive at a local single fathers meeting in their town. Essentially, it's just a bunch of single dads coming together to offer support, essentially discussing various parenting topics, having some good old male bonding, about their kids, and just kind of, cracking dad jokes. It's fairly benign, if you will, and it's not purely, sexually based. It's just a support group, if you will, which is where I misread it in the beginning, where I was like, oh, that's an interesting group. Sure. James is recently new to the area. He's moved in. He's taking over at a local sports store as their kind of manager of the sports store, if you will. He's actually the first one there to arrive before Ellis, and the pair hit it off. The natural chemistry is clear between the two fathers. Ellis was officially kind of a little hesitant in the beginning, and then when James opened his mouth, it was over for Ellis at that point. But when Ellis's boss's son gets a bit too close and flirty, as they're looking to get promoted within the company as the CEO George is leaving, Ellis announces that he has a boyfriend to his boss and son to kind of quell the boss's son from doing anything, more than that. When he does confess this to James, James offers to be Ellis's fake boyfriend, and the pair go on to have various dates throughout the book that aren't real dates. They made it abundantly clear in the beginning that at some point they'll have to break it off, and then that way he can say to Ian, I'm not ready to date, and I just got broken up with, I'm not ready to go back on the market, and just kind of prolong that pushing him off, essentially, instead of just flat out telling him no. I will say the dates are pretty cute. They go on a sailboating date. They have a sports date where they're playing softball, as the team has a softball the company that Ellis works for has a softball team, and James, because he's working in a sports store, is able to hook them up with various pieces of equipment and stuff like that, bats, jerseys, and because of that, he's able to be on the team as a contractor. So it's an enjoyable kind of date. I like the fake dates, even though they're bordering on the line of real versus fake, and who's to say at that point. But then James overhears Tanya planning a fancy dinner date for her husband and gets the idea to do the same with Ellis as a way to kind of continue the fake dating. What James doesn't know is that while he's having feelings, Ellis is also having feelings, but because the two of them don't want to talk about it, he kind of flubs the date when he announces that he overheard Tanya and that this was a planned outing so that way he can be seen with, by his boss, George, and that way he can get back to Ian, and just basically a comedy of errors that are basically boiling down to just a big old miscommunication or lack of communication between the two men. But when Ellis finds out that it wasn't an actual date, he kind of closes in on himself and realizes that, right, we're faking this. My emotions are now not valid, if you will. So it's definitely fun. They go on a couple of dates, and the kids are obviously there. There's like a barbecue background cookout. They're on there for the sailboating and stuff. And the kids are just kind of needling them. I'm like, when are you guys going to get married? When are you going to get married? And it's cute. I like them. I especially like how the kids are involved and not just kind of relegated to, like, yeah, I have a kid. So, moving into some tropes. We're dating the tropes today. So, obviously, we have one of my favorites, the fake boyfriend. James starts off with suggesting he be the fake boyfriend as it has benefits for him, fancy dinners, sailboating, excursions, things like that, where he kind of sees kind of a perk by fake dating Ellis, if you will. And he's a very convincing fake boyfriend, as their kids easily pick up what's going on, that the two are kind of feelings growing between them. They're kind of getting to a more emotionally connected state, and they joke that they're going to start planning their wedding. Sarah wants to be the ring bearer, and Brandon wants to be the flower boy, and you know what? We love bucking the tropes of flower girl and ring boy, But I would say the core of this book really just boils down to emotionally stunted adult men. I don't know if that's the best way I could phrase that. I would just say men who don't know how to communicate their feelings, but I think emotionally stunted adult men is probably the best I could go with. James, for all that he is good, he doesn't, kind of come out and say, hey, I'm interested in you, despite I'm being straight, that you thought I was straight and I was straight. And Ellis has some hang-ups with intimacy and repeatedly informs James that, they can end this whenever. He's basically like, Ellis is planning his exit, like, oh, this would be a good time, oh, this would be a good time. And James keeps kind of like pushing it out and being like, no, let's just keep going. Like, oh, there's a new excursion we're going to do with George or whatnot. Let's go do that, and then we'll break up like later. And it's just like, the sheer lack of communication is such a man trait. It's such a men trait of, even myself, I don't communicate, so I get it. And then I think that's pretty much it. There's not much here, Our kids are playing matchmakers in a way that they want to marry, their fathers off, which is kind of cute. But moving into the relationships. Yes, moving into the relationships here. Moving into the rankings, Ryan. Let's go through them as we normally go through the plot, characters, writing style, spicy scenes, and overall. Again, it's a short book. I don't really have much to say, but I think the plot, for what it is fairly middling. It's not anything to write home about, but it's enjoyable. They do have some great sex scenes, which we'll get into, but as far as the plot, it's fairly standard fare for a fake boyfriend. I've seen this done in movies, I've seen this done in fan fiction, and I think those have done it a little bit better. It's not saying this one's horrible, it's just really by the book, literally by the book, of fake boyfriend relationship building kind of thing, As far as the characters go, I did enjoy them. I think both Ellis and James are fully well written and fleshed out for what a short book this is. I kind of got a sense of who they are. Ellis has been kind of guarded and reserved with his relationships. James has been in a relationship. He's been married. He has a kid. He's divorced. He's kind of been through it all. So I kind of get the relationship that those two have, almost a hot, not polar opposite, if you will, like opposites attract in a way, if you will. But as far as writing style goes, it's fairly good. I didn't have anything major with it, like some of the books I've been recently reading, where I have had major typos or full-on references to anything pop culture and almost in every other page, it felt like. And those things kind of really pull me out. But I think this one's really grounded in reality. The writing style is very, I would say, simple, but not in a bad way. It's descriptive when it needs to be. It's not overly flowery, and it's kind of really right up my alley. I think this thing took me maybe 2 hours to read, give or take. I think I was reading it in the car, so it might have taken a lot longer to do that. But as far as the spicy scenes go, there's a few. There's some dick sucking, some dick pulling, but as far as the whole of it, it's fairly date heavy with the most that they have is like a kiss every now and then or some hand holding, which again is cute and is nice and is something I do enjoy. But besides that, there's no like full on bump and uglies, which is what I come to expect when it's, you know, a half naked man in glasses on the cover. And I'm like, oh, dads with benefits? Dads with benefits, you say, but it's more like dads with, you know, a fuck buddy, if you will. It's not like full friends with benefits. It's more like, you know, we're fake boyfriends. I guess I could get a blowjob out of this, you know? So overall, though, I would say this is a pretty solid book. 3.5 stars, I think. It's not by far my favorite book in terms of this trope or this kind of plot series. I haven't read anything else in the Fairview Dads book, but I think if Jason Collins does the same with the other ones, I think they'll all be enjoyable. I just wish there was more, period. I guess that's the sentence. I wish there was more. The plot is simple, but it's enjoyable. The characters are pretty great. I love the kids. I love the dads. I love the extended cast. George, Tanya's barely there, but Ian's a nice kind of foil, if you will, throughout the book, so I think that's enjoyable if you like something with a little bit more edge to it. But yeah, I think that's everything I could say for this. I don't have much else to go off of in terms of anything I liked or didn't like. It's pretty standard for what I've read so far, but let's go through what I could possibly recommend to you guys. So this one's a little bit hard for me. So I went basically daddy route because it's in the title and it's quite you know, for the, you know, dads with benefits, can't really go wrong with more daddies. So that's where I went and that's where I leaned into for this one. So if you're looking for another like actual father raising a child story, Whispers of Home, Pickleville 1 by April Kelly is a solid book. It's also got a tinge of bullies to lovers or like ex-bullies to lovers, which is always my favorite as well. So that's always worthwhile. But if you want more like a daddy and like kind of the daddy dynamic, In the Name of the Father, which is a review that's going to be coming out later this month, is also solid. It's definitely a different dynamic than this one. This one's more like light and fluffy and kind of a meet cute, if you will. In the Name of the Father is more like kind of angsty but still loving and sweet in a way. So that's why I picked both of these, because they're both involving the concept of a daddy, both literally and just kind of figuratively, if you will. So as we do at the end of every review, I thank you guys so much for watching. I would also like to give a special shout out to Potato Kingdom, my first ever patron, and I appreciate you so much for helping me do these, giving me ideas, giving me books to review, voting and stuff. If you guys ever do want to join Potato Kingdom in picking books for me to review, I do almost monthly polls at this point. I know it's fairly new since I've started Patreon, but I do monthly polls on books that I can review for the following month out of the plethora of books that I have not read. So I probably will never run out of books to read anytime soon, because I just got like 20 more this past month. So yeah, if you do want to follow me on any socials though, or if you want to see what I do in other places, you can follow me on twitch.tv/Sky, where I stream 7 nights a week starting at 6 p.m. PT, provided I'm not going away for holidays or anything like that. I do a variety of games on there. We have a great time. I do some rankings as well, as you probably will see here on the channel as well. If Twitter does decide to implode, you can find me on twitter.com/Sky up until the last fucking moment. If it does go down in a blaze of glory, at least I'll say I've seen the rise and fall of 2 social media networks, Tumblr and Twitter. And then obviously Patreon, if you want to support me in what I do as a streamer, as a book reviewer, as a just general human being, feel free to support me there if you want to. There's no pressure, but I hope you guys appreciate what I do, and I try to, give you guys some enjoyable content and reviews, and at least tell you some good books to read. So I hope you guys have a good evening or morning or afternoon whenever you see this. I'll see you guys in the next one, my friends, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. See you guys soon.